The Beriev MBR-2 is a somewhat rare flying boat in War Thunder, originally offered as an event vehicle and now listed on the marketplace. Let's check it out. The MBR-2 was a flying boat designed in the 1930s to fill a variety of roles for the Soviet Union. The original aircraft first flew in 1931 and served as a reconnaissance plane. Additional versions soon followed, with a variety of military and civilian revisions entering service. There were mailplane freight versions, additional recon versions, an airliner, and maritime patrol bombers. What we have in War Thunder is the MBR-2 M-34. This was a redesigned version with a large number of improvements over the basic design and served as a maritime patrol bomber. First, the cockpit was fully enclosed, and the rear gunner got a glazed turret. The front gunner still rode the wind though, so kinda sucks to be that guy. The M-34 also had an upgraded engine, some minor aerodynamic improvements, and hardpoints for external weapons. As a flying boat, it did see some limited service in World War II, but it wasn't a major player. Some revisions remained in service until the end of the 1940s in auxiliary roles, and as a fun bit of trivia, this was the first flying boat to get a NATO code name. They called it the Moat, and the only non-Soviet users were Finland, who operated about half a dozen captured planes, and North Korea, who used 2 of them for maritime reconnaissance. Overall, the MBR-2 is a fairly obscure bit of aviation history, and I had more difficulty finding information about it in primary sources than any of the other aircraft I've covered so far. For armaments, in real life, this version carried bombs, depth charges, and naval mines. In War Thunder, all we get are a few loadouts of light bombs. Pretty much exactly what you'd expect for a plane like this, but I'll admit I felt a little let down not to get any of the anti-shipping weapons. The flight performance of the MBR-2 is typical low-tier bomber stuff. Average speed, surprising maneuverability, and a reasonable rate of climb. Under realistic conditions, your top cruising speed's going to be between 220 to 230 km/h, but you can get a bit faster in a dive. The wings rip at about 400 though, so be careful there. And you can safely drop flaps at basically any speed. One thing that really impressed me, considering what this plane is, was its ability to snap into turns with combat flaps out. I was able to even get some dogfight kills with this thing, by maneuvering behind opponents and letting my front gunner work his magic with the SCAS. That said, this plane is pretty easy to shoot down. It's huge, and not especially fast if it gets caught up in a fight, which makes it an easy target. It has no armor, anywhere, and likes to catch on fire. The engine is especially vulnerable, being exposed and mounted on top of the plane, and it's more than a little ironic to get warnings about high water temperature in a flying boat. Flying in missions with this plane can be a lot of fun, and can also be a little frustrating. This is one of the few planes where I can say I actually had a better time flying in arcade battles than in realistic, basically because of the CCIP for the bombs. If you fly into RB, you're somewhat limited to high or medium altitude bombing. If you get too low, you're fighter bait, and even AI-controlled AAA can be a credible threat. The bombs this plane gets aren't the most accurate, and they're really difficult to aim without, any sort of a bomb sight. The zoomed-in bomb sight view doesn't feel as reliable as I'm used to, and if you're using that at low altitude, it means you're not maneuvering out of the way of incoming fire. In arcade battles, though, the plane feels a bit more survivable against ground-based AAA, so doing lower-level tactical bombing is absolutely an option, especially with the bomb sight and reloading bomb loads. Flying out as close air support in any game mode is a lot of fun, but can also be frustrating. Frustrating since the plane is vulnerable to small caliber gunfire from even entry-level player vehicles, but a lot of fun because, come on, it's a frickin' flying boat cruising around bombing on tanks and patrol boats. It's a little more expensive in terms of spawn points to fly this plane out relative to its effectiveness, but I still had a lot of fun with it. Visually, the MBR-2 is, well, it's a flying boat. I kind of like the look of flying boat hulls on an aircraft, and the top-mounted engine just oozes with that early 1930s classic design where anything goes and everything was done kind of by the seat of the pants. I really enjoy it when I can pull out a good mission in a primitive-looking plane like this. Speaking of primitive, landing the MBR-2 is easy-ish? You just get low and slow down. No landing gear of any kind, so all landings are belly landings. Landing on water is pretty much the same, but if you're going too fast, you can rip your outrigger floats off. Try to land under about 140 kilometers an hour. The cockpit is kinda awful. The forward visibility is obstructed by your gunner, who may or may not be dead at any given moment, and the rest of the internals are just a placeholder. Yuck. I only flew this thing in VR once. To close out on the Beriev MBR-2 M-34. This plane is surprisingly maneuverable for what it is, and the front gunner has a great field of fire, including some pretty good angles below the plane. Also, it's a flying boat. However, it's incredibly vulnerable even to small arms fire. It doesn't get any anti-ship weapons, and it's a flying boat. The final verdict on the MBR-2 is, this is a fun but quirky plane. Buyer beware if you're thinking about getting this on the marketplace, since it's not super effective in missions. But if and when it comes back as an event vehicle, it could be worth working towards just for its novelty value if nothing else. As always, thanks for watching.